hair look good. Guys, ready to get it sparked in here? We're gonna get it sparked in here today. Just shows a little new background. Sometimes you need to change things up. I'm Olivia. Welcome to the 10-minute live spark where we are sparking curiosity in the classroom and in our leadership practices. We're going to jump right into today's topic. I want you to imagine walking into your classroom and saying, "Today I want everyone to write 5 questions about chapter 7." Some students comply, some stare at the page, some ask, how many do we need? Do we really need 5? Now, let's imagine something totally different, because we're all about sparking ideas over here. You walk outside and discover that overnight, every tree on campus has been wrapped with blue ribbon. No explanation, no announcement, just blue ribbon. How long do you think it takes before students begin asking questions? Whole different scenario, right? Not because you assigned them, but because they have to know. That's the difference between assigning inquiry and sparking curiosity. This curiosity thing is serious, and that's why I spend my 10 minutes with you guys on Wednesdays trying to figure out how can we spark more of it in our teaching, and that's what we're going to focus on today. How can we spark more curiosity in our classrooms and actually get students to ask more questions? So inquiry doesn't begin with questions. Inquiry begins with curiosity. Questions are simply curiosity finding its voice. And I really don't know someone who was curious that didn't start asking questions. Just the other day, a lady was talking to me and she spoke to me that she had a son in his late 20s. He suffered a mental illness and she was trying to get him to apply for this program. But anyway, I asked her, what does he like? What is this program about? And she basically said, this program is about, him applying to learn how to drive semi trucks. And he's always dreamed of driving semi trucks. I said, really? That's it? I said, okay. I said, let's figure out how we can spark his curiosity and his motivation to possibly apply for this application to get in this program. And I asked her, I said, do you have a picture of your son? I've never met this lady. Okay. I just met this lady. I said, do you have a picture of your son? She says, yes, I do. I said, I can show you in just a few minutes how we can create an image of him driving a semi truck, smiling. And let's send him that image and see what happens. So she pulls out the image. I take a picture. I literally create the image for it. And she started asking me so many questions. She was like, how were you able to do this so fast? And it just made her curious as to what else can we do in AI. But that was just, again, when you're thinking or you are exposed to something you've never been exposed to before, you cannot help but to ask questions because now you've created in the mind a reason to know. And that's what we're not doing in the classrooms. We're not giving the students a reason to know this content. Why? And then the more questions they ask, the more they're motivated to figure it out on their own. Sometimes we expect students to generate thoughtful questions from curriculum content they've never had a chance to care about. When people start caring about something and seeing how it relates to their life, questions come out. That's a difficult cognitive lift because there isn't enough uncertainty or emotional investment. When curiosity comes first, though, inquiry, literally the questions will begin to flow naturally. So I'm going to give you 2 examples of how we can make this work. So the first example, suppose students open a textbook to a chapter on local water quality. What questions do you have? You ask. Most questions stay on the surface because students haven't experienced a reason to wonder about water quality. Now we're going to flip the script because that's what we do on Spark Curiosity Live. Students receive a message from the city asking for help because residents have noticed fish disappearing from a nearby creek. That's one way. Or they collect water samples from a neighborhood stream and discover unexpected results. Now the questions become different. I just said it's in your neighborhood. It came from your city. Why is this happening? Who is affected? Has it always been this way? What should we investigate? The curriculum didn't change. The only thing is I now presented a scenario to make them curious. The context did. And it doesn't take a long time in order to do this. Now, let's look at one more example. Real communities are full of mysteries, right? We love a good mystery. That's why we go watch movies. We want to see what happens. Why does traffic always back up at one intersection? Why are certain playgrounds always empty? Why is one park cleaner than another? Why do some businesses thrive while others have to close down? These aren't just social studies questions. They're science questions. They're math questions, writing questions, leadership questions. And when learning starts with an authentic problem, students begin generating questions because they see themselves as investigators. Mm-mm-mm. Rather than simple learners completing an assignment, they're searching. We've cultivated a desire in them to search for the answer versus just to tell you the answer. This is some powerful stuff. The more I dig into curiosity, the more I just say, man, I wish I had a teacher sparking my curiosity. As instructional leaders, one of the most powerful questions we can ask isn't how do we teach inquiry? That's not the question. The question is, how do we design experiences that naturally create curiosity? How can we design experiences that naturally create curiosity? Because once curiosity is present, inquiry becomes much less of a strategy and much more of a human response. We don't have to convince students to ask questions, they will abundantly ask questions because you spark thinking in them. We simply have to create the conditions where questions become unavoidable. And I would love to hear examples if you've experienced this in your classrooms or in a book you read on how people were able to spark curiosity and get people asking a lot of questions. So, if there's one idea I'd love for you to carry into this week, it's this. This one idea. Don't start with the questions. Start with the wonder. So don't start with the questions. Start with the wonder. Curiosity isn't the reward at the end of learning, it's the invitation that begins it. And if this conversation sparked your thinking, I hope you're continuing exploring these ideas with educators from around the world at the Spark Curiosity EDU, The Experience 2026 in Austin, Texas. Together, we'll discover practical ways to design learning experiences that inspire students to think deeply, ask meaningful questions, and lead their own learning. Until next time, I want you to keep sparking curiosity before instruction because that's where the real learning begins. So let's see, what are we going to play today? What's going to be our end song? Mm, 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 mm. Let's play. Mm, mm, mm. I got so many good songs over here. I like the It Lives in Us, even though I created this for, us as African American people to embrace our heritage and the legacy that's in us. But the lives in us is curiosity lives in us. Wonder lives in us, but we got to be able to untap it. So I'm going to leave with that song for today. It lives in us.
Let me tell you about a man in 700s Maryland. No school, no rights, but brilliance in his hands. Benjamin Banneker, self-taught, looked up at the sky, mapped the stars, built a clock, helped design DC design. Then Louis Latimer took the bulb and made it last. Garrett Morgan watched the crossroads, saw the chaos, stop and wait. These are the ones who know our world and borrowed ours. The roots run deep, that's how the tallest trees grow.
It lives in us, every dream they dared to dream. It lives in us, more than history, more than a theme. In our hands, in our minds, in the way we push through. Everything they gave is already alive in you. It lives in us.
Katherine Johnson, pencil sharp trajectory true. John Glenn said he wouldn't fly till she ran the numbers through. Dorothy Vaughan led the room before they gave her the title. Mary Jackson broke the ceiling, every barrier suicidal. Gladys West never made the headlines, but you got the flowers who held up space. Programs and segregated hours, write down, map the whole earth. Teach it like it's sacred, the foundation of this nation, and it still goes unacknowledged.
It lives in us, every dream they dared to dream. It lives in us, more than history, more than a theme. In our hands, in our minds, in the way we push through. Everything they gave is already alive in you. It lives in us.
Jesse Wilkins in the college at 13 years old. Manhattan Project classified, a story never told. Mark Dean worked at NASA and gave children the water gun. George Washington Carver turned a peanut into 300s. Every lab, every patent, every theorem, every cure. They did it without credit, still they gave us something pure. These are the ones who never got their flowers or history.